The chair will now entertain requests for 1-minute speeches. For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, the House is not in order.
The House will be in order. Members, please take your conversations off the floor. The gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize the historic ceremony at Independence Hall earlier this month celebrating America's semi-quincentennial. On July 2nd, a group of representatives traveled to Philadelphia, the birthplace of our country, to commemorate the exact date when the Second Continental Congress voted to declare independence from Great Britain. Mr. Speaker, the origins of a republic trace back to Pennsylvania, and Independence Hall has served as a physical representation of the birthplace of the United States. Within those hallowed halls, delegates from the original 13 colonies debated in good faith and voted for independence. This building has long been the symbol of freedom and democracy around the world. Mr. Speaker, Pennsylvania has always been my home, and the Keystone Commonwealth of Pennsylvania has stood firm in its commitment to freedom and prosperity. I want to commend the 37 members of Congress for traveling to Philadelphia and for their efforts to preserve our legacy for future generations, just as the Founding Fathers intended it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Arizona seek recognition? Without objection, the gentlelady from Arizona is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today with great pride to recognize a remarkable milestone for Tucson's Academia de Baile Tradición y Cultura as it celebrates 25 years of inspiring young people, including my own children, nieces, and nephews, from across Tucson and Southern Arizona through dance, culture, and community. For a quarter of a century, Academia de Baile has provided generations of students with exceptional dance instruction, has fostered confidence, discipline, and a deep appreciation for the rich cultural traditions that make Southern Arizona so vibrant. I want to congratulate the dedicated directors and instructors whose passion and dedication have made this achievement possible, the students whose hard work, talent, and artistry continue to impress us, and the families whose unwavering support have helped make this academy flourish for so many years. Academia de Baile is proof of how the arts bring people together, preserve our heritage, and strengthen our communities. Their legacy is reflected not only in the performances on stage, but in the lives that they have touched across Tucson and Southern Arizona. On behalf of Arizona's 7th Congressional District, muchísimas felicidades to Academia de Baile on their 25th anniversary, and I wish them many more years of success. Gracias para todos. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields. For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor an extraordinary veteran, public servant, and advocate, Izzy Quintana, and to congratulate him on his well-earned retirement. After serving our nation as a major in the United States Army Reserve, Izzy never stopped answering the call to serve. As the Veteran Outreach Coordinator for Bridges PFC Joseph P. Dwyer Vet-to-Vet Peer Support Program, he has dedicated himself to helping veterans in crisis, connecting them with critical resources, and ensuring they never face their struggles alone. Drawing on his military and law enforcement experience, Izzy has trained police recruits to respond to veterans in crisis while helping veterans find housing, navigate difficult circumstances, and access support. His volunteer work with the American Legion, his church's food pantry, and other local organizations embodies what it truly means to put service above self. This year, Izzy received the New York State Suicide Prevention Conference Pair Up Award, and I'm proud to recognize him as one of New York's 17th District Veterans of the Year. His selfless service is an example to us all. Thank you, Izzy, for your extraordinary service to our veterans, our community, and our country. I wish you the very best in your retirement, my friend. I yield back.
Gentleman yields. For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask for unanimous
revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I have recognized the excellent staff members who are working with me in this term, may I also recognize and thank the young people, college students, and recent college graduates who have labored in the inglorious role of intern, doing day-to-day grunt work necessary but often boring. They have given months of their young lives on my behalf, and I'm grateful. Isabel Tenney, Anna Barlas, Piper Genkin, Mariana Ortega, Sebastian Rojas, Miles Genkin, Krishna Rivera, Tim Manson, and Tommy Cole. I trust this experience was a good one, and that in the years to come, they will achieve great professional and personal success. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields. For purposes, the gentleman from Colorado seek recognition. Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize the volunteer firefighters of Beulah, Colorado for their extraordinary service during the Aspen Acres fire in Pueblo County. When shifting winds drove the fire toward the town of Beulah, the town's 22-member volunteer fire department stood between the flames and their community. Several firefighters lost their own homes during this fire. Even so, they remained on the line, working to protect their neighbors and the town they call home. That choice says more about their character than any words I could offer today. It reflects courage, duty, and the deeply rooted sense of community that defines Beulah and so much of Colorado's 3rd District. I'm honored to recognize the Beulah Volunteer Fire Department and to thank every firefighter who chose service to others over personal loss. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields. For all purposes, the gentleman from California seek recognition.
Speaker, to address the body for 1 minute without objection.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, today I rise to honor Major Antoinette Nadur, an Orange County resident, a veteran, and a person who spent her career serving the homeless and at-risk veterans. Antoinette began her career after witnessing a surge of service members returning from Iraq and Afghanistan who were homeless. This motivated her to co-found the Veterans Legal Institute in Orange County, where she focused on developing veteran-focused legal services. This month, she is retiring from her role as Executive Director of the Veterans Legal Services, but she will continue to make a difference in the lives of veterans, serving as an ambassador and supporting fundraising efforts to ensure that our veterans receive the legal help that they deserve. Colleagues, today I ask you to join me in recognizing Antoinette Nadur for the profound impact that she has made in the lives of our veterans. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield.
Gentleman yields. For all purposes, the gentlelady from Wyoming seek recognition.
I seek unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize and congratulate high school senior Miriam Washut of Lander on winning the grand prize in the Presidential 1776 Award. This national civics contest challenges high school students across the country on their knowledge of the founders, the Revolutionary War, and the documents that delivered the birth of our republic. Miriam demonstrated her superior knowledge of America's founding at every stage of this national competition, earning her a well-earned prize of a $150,000 scholarship and a trip to the Oval Office where she told the president her plans to attend Wyoming Catholic College. 250 years after the Declaration of Independence was signed, students like Miriam show the promise of our revolutionary principles carried on by the next generation for another 250 years. Thank you, Miriam, for making Wyoming proud with your profound interest in America's founding. And I yield back.
Gentlelady yields. For all purposes, the gentleman from Missouri seek recognition. Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today as the proud representative of the largest Bosniak population outside of Bosnia and Herzegovina and to stand in solidarity with them. Over the weekend, we marked 31 years since more than 8,300 Bosniaks were murdered at Srebrenica. Today, we remember the victims and stand with the families and survivors. Srebrenica should never have happened, and yet it did. Not because the world didn't know, but because in too many places, the world chose to look away. As co-chair of the Bosnia Caucus and as a St. Louisan, I will do everything I can to ensure we are reaffirming our commitment to truth and remembrance. We have an obligation to honor that history and to support those who live with its legacy and trauma every day. I yield back.
Gentleman yields. For all purposes, the gentleman from Utah seek recognition.
Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, right now as we stand in this chamber, devastating wildfires are tearing across our lands. To the brave crews working around the clock on the front lines, thank you. Your courage is keeping our community standing. Our prayers are with you. We especially hold in our hearts the families of the brave firefighters who were recently lost along the Utah-Colorado border, including Emily Barker, Nick Hutcherson, and Sydney Watson. These individuals made the ultimate sacrifice, and we owe them a debt of gratitude we can never truly repay. Possibly the most frustrating part is that, in many cases, we already have the solutions to deal with these wildfires. We know how to thin overgrown brush. We know how to clear hazardous fuels. We know how to restore health to our forests through proactive management. The obstacle isn't a lack of knowledge, it's bureaucracy. Decades of bloated regulation delay critical mitigation work for years. But a wildfire does not wait for a multi-year environmental review. The flames do not pause for paperwork. That is why we passed the Fix Our Forest Act. That is why I passed the Utah Wildfire Research Institute Act. Our communities cannot afford another year of congressional inaction. I urge my colleagues to cut the red tape, pass common sense and often life-saving legislation, and protect our lands. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
The gentleman yields. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Michigan seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
I am so proud that our Michigan chapter of the Huntington's Disease Society of America is Chapter of the Year. They got their award, and it's an incredible team that elevates the personal stories of so many of our residents, and they advocate for increased research funding, improved access to care, and policies that better support our families living with Huntington's disease. This includes Andy Zaman, who received the Youth Huntington's Disease Award after losing his birth mother to Huntington's disease and being diagnosed himself. He continues to bring incredible courage and optimism to this space. I also want to honor Dave Stickles, who also received the Marjorie Guthrie Award for his unwavering commitment to supporting families. I am so incredibly proud of our Michigan chapter. The national awards recognize advocates who have turned personal hardship into public service. Their tireless advocacy has now helped hundreds, if not thousands of families, again, living with Huntington's disease. You all have given many people a voice, and I'm so incredibly proud that you received this award.
Gentlelady yields. For what purpose does the gentleman from Washington seek recognition?
Speaker, I request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, today I rise to honor Moses Lake Police Officer Edgar Salazar for his public service and congratulate him on being named the 2026 Hometown Hero by the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of Washington. This well-deserved award is in recognition of Officer Salazar's heroic actions at the Gorge Amphitheater Campground in 2023, when he put his life on the line and helped to prevent a mass shooting. Officer Salazar, thank you for the remarkable courage you displayed that day in saving dozens of lives, and for your continued service to the Moses Lake community. You represent the best in law enforcement, and we are all grateful for your service. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Oregon seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Gentlelady, without objection, the gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Today I rise in honor of Commander Gabriel Edwards from Oakland, Oregon, who died while serving as the commanding officer of Helicopter Sea Combat Squadron 5 in the Arabian Sea. After 4 days of searching over 14,000 square miles, the Navy declared him lost at sea during an emergency helicopter landing. Gabriel earned his wings as a helicopter pilot in 2008 and received several awards during his service, including the Defense Meritorious Service Medal. He knew he wanted to be a pilot at just 4 years old. This is how his wife, Rebecca, described him. Gabe has dedicated his life to serving his country with honor, courage, and commitment. He led with humility, integrity, and compassion, always putting his people before himself. To those who served alongside him, he was a respected leader and mentor. My thoughts are with Rebecca and their 2 children during this time. I am glad to know the Secretary of the Navy has directed that Edwards be posthumously promoted to the rank of captain. His heroism will never be forgotten, and I know all of us in Oregon and around the country thank him for his honorable service. May his memory be a blessing.
Gentlelady yields. For all purposes, the gentleman from Georgia seek recognition.
Ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize the 200th anniversary of the First Presbyterian Church of Macon, Georgia. Organized on June 18, 1826 by the Reverend Benjamin Gildersleeve and Reverend Joseph C. Stiles, the church began with just 25 founding members. Since 1858, its historic sanctuary on Mulberry Street has stood as a landmark of downtown Macon and a fixture on the National Register of Historic Places. For 2 centuries, First Presbyterian has served as the mother church to several congregations across Middle Georgia and has equipped its members in every area of life through worship, discipleship, fellowship, and mission. Today, First Presbyterian continues to welcome more than 1,000 members, carrying forward a legacy that has spanned wars, revitalization, and generations of Middle Georgia families. I congratulate the leaders in the congregation of First Presbyterian Church on this remarkable milestone, and I thank them for 200 years of faithful ministry to the city of Macon. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
Thank you. The gentleman yields. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Ohio seek recognition? Without objection, the gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, tonight I rise to honor the life and legacy of Toledo resident Betty Ann Amison Lewis, a community builder. An erudite woman with a true servant's heart, Betty looked for every opportunity she could to serve our community of Northwest Ohio. As founding director of Toledo's Grace Community Center, Betty devoted decades to others with the same grace for which the community center was named. She supported young men and women as they navigated parenthood. She offered after-school care to thousands of children and reinvigorated Toledo seniors with a sense of belonging. Our community will miss Betty deeply. We grieve with her loved ones, and our community celebrates her life and will remember her fondly for the tenacity with which she served others. Her life and legacy will live on in the unrelenting mission of Grace Community Center to better the lives of Northwest Ohio families. And to her husband, Morris, her children, Yvette, Anika, Chantel, Alvin, Alicia, stepchildren, Morris, Terrence, and Myron, and her beloved grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and other family and friends who will miss her dearly. Know she was profoundly grateful and awed by your love. May Betty's good work and positive energy live on in your minds and hearts. Her amazing spirit is invincible, and I know it is alive and at work in our community and world. May her life be blessed. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
Thank you. The gentlelady yields. For what purpose does the gentleman from Missouri seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor the life and legacy of Stephen Lampley, a devoted husband, loving father, faithful servant of God, and a tireless advocate for the people of Southwest Missouri. Steve was a genuinely good man. He loved his wife, Kathy. He loved his children, William, Rachel, and Haley. Nothing made him happier than spending time with them, whether hunting, fishing, camping, or just being together. More than anything else, that's how I know Steve would want to be remembered. The values that guided Steve at home were the same values that guided his service to our community. A lot of people complain about the state of our government, but Steve believed the answer wasn't just to complain, it was to get involved. And boy, did he do that. Through his work with the Greene County Republican Central Committee and the Missouri Republican Assembly, he devoted countless hours to strengthening the grassroots and serving his fellow Missourians, spending his own time and money driving to Jefferson City, advocating for legislation, getting bills that protected people's constitutional rights across the finish line. If you knew Steve, you knew he never asked someone else to do something he wasn't willing to do himself. He stepped up when leadership was needed, treated everyone with dignity and respect, and quietly went about doing what he believed was right. My prayers are with Kathy, William, Rachel, Haley, and everyone who loves Steve. May God comfort them in these days ahead, and may they always find peace in the life and the legacy that he lived and the example that he leaves behind. May he rest in peace. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you. The gentleman yields. For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask for unanimous consent to address the body for 1 minute, revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, there are some people who build companies, and there are others who build confidence. George E. Johnson did both. He understood something this nation too often refused to see, that black people did not need permission to be beautiful, brilliant, or prosperous. We simply needed the opportunity to define ourselves. Through Afro Sheen, he did more than create a successful business. He challenged a culture that had spent centuries teaching black men and women to doubt the beauty that they saw in the mirror. Every bottle that left his factory carried more than a product. It carried a declaration that black enterprise could flourish, that black excellence could employ thousands, inspire generations, and transform neighborhoods. His success was not measured merely in dollars, but in dignity. He proved that ownership is more than economics. It is self-determination. George Johnson, a beloved family friend, invested not only in hair care, but in human care. He invested in communities, in education, in churches, and young dreamers who needed someone to believe that greatness could look like them. He understood that wealth finds its highest purpose when it creates opportunities for others. His legacy reminds us that freedom is incomplete if it cannot produce opportunity. Equality is unfinished if it cannot nurture enterprise. And justice remains unfinished if the gifts of a people are ignored. Today we honor not simply a businessman, but a visionary who helped America become more fully itself by insisting that black genius belonged not on the margins of its history, but at its very center core. May we remember George E. Johnson not only for what he sold, but for what he restored: confidence, possibility, and pride. May his life continue to remind every child who dares to dream that the greatest investment one can ever make is in the limitless potential of one's own people. To a beloved friend and an outstanding American, we love you and we honor you, the Honorable George E. Johnson. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Thank you. The gentleman yields. For all purposes, the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition.
And extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, it is with profound sadness that I rise today to honor the life and legacy of Helen DiGirolamo of Bensalem, Bucks County, Pennsylvania, who we sadly lost on July 10th of 2026 at the age of 98. Born in Philadelphia in 1928, Helen was a cherished member of the St. Ephraim's Church in Bensalem for 55 years, where she rooted her life in faith, in service, and in her community. In her younger years, she loved bowling, and throughout her life, she was known for her exceptional cooking, especially during the holiday weekends and weekdays and gatherings with her family surrounding her at the table. Helen was preceded in death by her beloved husband of 45 years, Eugene, and their daughter, Janice. She is survived by her children, Jean and Joanne, her son-in-law, Michael, 7 grandchildren, and 11 great-grandchildren. And Mr. Speaker, her son, Jean, was so good to her in all of her years, particularly her later years, where every single Sunday he dedicated to spending time with her. Helen DiGirolamo will be deeply missed, but her spirit will live on in the family and the community she so dearly loved. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Thank you. The gentleman yields. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 3rd, 2025, the gentleman from New Mexico, Stansberry, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the minority leader.
Mr. Speaker, I ask for unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and to submit extraneous material into the record.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, we rise tonight to acknowledge that DOGE is indeed dead. Mr. Speaker, the scandals, the gossip, when New Mexicans tune in to see what is happening here in Washington, it feels like they're tuning into an episode of a reality TV show rather than another day in the people's house. But the messiest house isn't an overseas villa, it's the White House. The president has a lot of messy friends and a lot of messy breakups. But the biggest breakup of all was the breakup between President Trump and Elon Musk 1 year ago. One day, Elon is sending a love letter of hundreds of millions in campaign donations to the president's campaign, and the next he's wondering where it all went wrong. And after all the insults, all the public arguing, and a very public divorce, today we're here to say to Elon Musk and his so-called Department of Government Efficiency, I'm so sorry, but you have not been chosen and you will be dumped from the villa. And now that the season of DOGE is over, it's time to look back and have a reunion episode and answer the question on everyone's mind. Where did it all go wrong? Was it all talk? Or did Elon actually deliver on his promises? Because when DOGE was created and Americans heard what they were up to, there were some very big promises. He said he could save $2 trillion by cutting waste, fraud, and abuse across the federal government. Well, the honeymoon is over, and I think the numbers say it all. He didn't even save a fraction of that amount. And in fact, what we know is that due to disruptions in government services and firings and litigation, he may have actually cost the federal government more money than he saved. In fact, here's what we know about DOGE's impacts. Large-scale loss of experienced federal employees. Our agencies lost tens of thousands of employees through layoffs, deferred resignations, early retirements, and hiring freezes. They reduced the institutional knowledge of generations across our agencies and made it impossible to do basic functions that our communities needed. Forest Service, Bureau of Indian Affairs, our nuclear agencies who protect the nuclear and national security of this country. They disrupted government services. Agencies were unable to process basic functions. They attacked your Social Security. They laid off thousands of veterans across our federal government who had served this great country and given their sacrifice in service, only to find themselves eliminated by a cheap date in the West Wing. Legal challenges. We don't even know how many lawsuits there have been in the wake of DOGE. Personnel actions, agency restructuring, illegal orders, withholding of funds, and many, many more that are still awaiting to be adjudicated by the courts. And let us not forget that they stole your data. That's right. They came in talking a big talk, saying that they were going to digitize our federal government and modernize it and help us actually make the government work for the people. And it was a front for stealing your personal data. Your IRS data, your Social Security data, your bank account data. They not only went into the most private systems of the federal government and stole your data, but they exported it and gave it to private companies. This is not just a run-of-the-mill exercise in modernizing the government. They stole your data for profit, for campaign advancement, and to ensure that they could be able to continue to access your data for power. In addition to that, they broke key aspects of our federal government. They disrupted contracts. They gave themselves private contracts. They gave away billions of dollars in federal taxpayer dollars for defense contracts to their friends, for NASA contracts for their friends, for weather service contracts for their friends. They disbanded decades of scientific research on every single continent across this planet. The reductions in workforce not just impacted the functioning of the federal government, but disrupted local economies across the country, especially in our rural communities. And let us not forget the most consequential impacts that we know came as a result of Elon Musk's dangerous date with the White House, and that is the dismantling of the USAID. We know that as a direct result of the dismantling of public health programs that have been in place across the world for decades, that literally thousands of children across the world died as a direct result. Medicine, food. They came in claiming that they were trying to cut waste, and they left food for starving children to sit in warehouses and rot while children did not have anything to eat. They let medicine expire in warehouses and actually threw it away rather than give it to people for whom it would save their lives. And what do they have to answer for it as they've come here to testify before Congress? Is there any remorse for the lives that were lost? Is there any remorse for the thousands of children whose lives were taken because they could not access medicine? Is there any remorse for the thousands of nonprofit organizations who serve our communities every day who have been impacted? Is there any remorse for the hundreds of thousands of federal workers who they fired and whose lives they disrupted? No. There's no remorse. Because let me tell you this has been one toxic relationship since the very beginning. So here's what we know. DOGE, you are voted off the island, and we do not want to ever see you back here again. The American people want efficiency. The American people want a government that serves them. The American people want to make sure that their leaders care for the communities that they live in and will care for them. But the American people do not want toxic billionaires trying to steal their taxpayer dollars and dismantling the basic services that keep them well. And so we bid goodbye to DOGE. We say farewell. We won't miss you. We won't miss you as you leave the island and take your big exit. But what we will say is that we will continue to fight every single day for the American people. We will continue to actually work to make this government work for the American people, to actually cut real waste and real fraud and real abuse, and the real abusers who are sitting in the White House and committing waste, fraud, and abuse on the American people every single day. And we will commit that when we take back this House, when we take back the White House, that we will fight for a nation that fights for our people and bring a new deal to this country that serves the working people of this country, that invests in housing and healthcare and food, that protects the environment, that fights for climate action, and that cares for the human dignity of our people. That is our promise. Because we don't want any more toxic relationships. And so, we just say this: the American people deserve better, girl, and we are here for you. And with that, I yield to my colleague for so much time as she may consume.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Representative Stansbury and Mr. Speaker. When I came into the 119th session, I was ready to work with anyone to root out waste, fraud, and abuse in government. We are here to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars, and we should want our government to be efficient. But that's not what happened. We started with a bipartisan congressional effort. Then President Trump appointed Elon Musk, who stood there with a chainsaw, brought in a bunch of unqualified DOGE bros, who then said that they were going to make $2 trillion in savings from the federal budget, but made no meaningful impact in spending. What they did was they tortured and they went after our public employees. They cost taxpayers $10 billion through deferred resignation program. 300,000 federal workers were fired or urged to retire, including 100,000 veterans. And this wasn't done in a strategic way. People were fired without understanding what their jobs were. For instance, off the Oregon coast, they fired the people that knew how to operate the tsunami warning system. That isn't rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse. They shut down promising innovations like direct file at the request of big businesses that would financially benefit. That hurts low-income and working Americans who now have to pay to file their taxes. They slowed responses to complaints to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which had previously helped return $21 billion to Americans. They purged USAID, got rid of 83% of USAID projects. Impact Counter estimates that 757,000 people died, mostly children. And we lost the benefit of soft power that we were able to have when we invested in this very effective program. They tried to end NIOSH and canceled $3.8 billion in NIH grants. They laid off 1,300 critical federal workers from NOAA. And then if you want to talk about government overreach, we want to talk about small government. Well, that's not what happened with DOGE. They gained access to personal data like our Social Security numbers, our tax returns, and our health records. Waste, fraud, and abuse still exists in the federal government. For instance, if we want to root out waste, fraud, and abuse, let's start with the Pentagon that failed the last 8 audits. There is a ton of waste, fraud, and abuse. They have awarded more than $208 billion in contracts to companies that are cited for repeated or willful violations. Why are we not addressing that? We should want government to be more efficient. We should want to root out waste, fraud, and abuse, and I will work with anyone to make that happen. Instead, what we did was we gave a chainsaw to a trillionaire who made his money off of federal grants, off of federal research, off of federal projects, and then cut critical investments to make our government work better for working people. So on July 4th, DOGE shut down. It doesn't intend to publish a final report because what they would have to report is a giant failure that cost taxpayers $10 billion. So I say goodbye, good riddance, and let's not do this again.
Well, Mr. Speaker, there are so many things to be said about DOGE and the waste of money and lives that happened over the course of the year and a half that it was officially on the books. But, Mr. Speaker, I also want to take a moment to talk about our country at a crossroads. Do we continue to use American taxpayer dollars to fund the killing of civilians, of children, and families abroad? Or do we finally say enough? Well, today, I took a vote for the children, for peace, and for the future of this country by voting yes on an amendment to block $3.3 billion in offensive military aid. This is money that should be used to build roads, to build housing, to lower the cost of food, for childcare, for families who are struggling right here in the United States. I didn't come to Congress to write blank checks to the military. I did not come to Congress to write blank checks to foreign militaries to bomb civilians. And I did not come here to support an unending and illegal war in the Middle East. That is why I chose today to block offensive military aid. Today, I choose our people over weapons. I choose peace over war, and I choose accountability over silence, and I will continue to choose that every single time. Now, Mr. Speaker, as we close out this debate and the broken promises of DOGE in this administration, let us just be reminded that when President Trump and Elon Musk first created DOGE, the American people were promised it would cut waste, it would fight fraud and abuse, and save the taxpayers $2 trillion across the government. And so many of us hoped that that was actually true, because cutting waste, fraud, and abuse is not a partisan issue. It is just good government. And all of us want a government that actually works for the people of this country. But actions speak louder than words. And when it comes to the legacy of DOGE and this administration, its actions speak for themselves. Instead of cutting waste, they cut over 100,000 jobs of veterans across the federal government. Veterans in my district who worked at the VA and across our federal agencies, who wanted nothing more than to continue their service to this country. They cut workers in charge of maintaining our nuclear stockpile, only to scramble to rehire them. They fired some of our nation's top scientists responsible for making sure our national security is taken care of. They attacked Social Security. They fired thousands of workers across the Social Security Administration, including in my district where people were struggling just to get access to their basic needs being met. DOGE cut back hours, fired hundreds across New Mexico, pushed seniors and children and veterans to the brink. Instead of saving taxpayers money, DOGE cost taxpayers billions of dollars in lost productivity and lost revenue and the cost to hire essential civil servants they fired. And instead of fighting abuse, DOGE gave the richest man on planet Earth direct influence over government decision-making and access to our personal and financial data. But of course, we will never know the true damage that DOGE did because the administration won't even release the final information. No final report even explaining what they did. This is not okay. And let me say this to this administration. You better bet we will be investigating every inch of what you did through DOGE and your behavior in the administration. The American people deserve transparency. The American people deserve a government that works for them. The American people deserve a government and leaders who tell the truth. The American people deserve accountability for their taxpayer dollars. And the American people deserve respect, especially those who have served this great nation. And even though DOGE's disaster is officially over on the books, we already have another agency whose job is to find waste, fraud, and abuse. And so we will continue to investigate what happened through DOGE, and we will continue to do the work of improving our government, and we will continue to investigate what has happened. So our question is, after all that has been said and done, will the Republicans of this body continue to support the lies that this administration has put forward through DOGE? Will they continue to support the dismantling of our federal agencies as is happening right now at the Department of Education as we stand here in the Education Committee? Will they continue to raid agencies like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and steal money from the taxpayers? Will they continue to allow this administration to steal your taxpayers and give it to the military to bomb civilians overseas? Will they continue to allow an out-of-control president to make billions of dollars in self-dealing while lining his pockets and demolitioning the White House? Or will they actually stand up for the American people? Because that is the real waste, fraud, and abuse. And that is the real corruption. A president who is wasting our taxpayers on an unending and illegal war. Painting a pool filled with algae, a golden ballroom, and trying to put his name on the Kennedy Center, spending millions of dollars, taxpayer dollars, litigating over illegal actions he's taken since taking office. All while giving private contracts to his own family members and the very man who started DOGE in the first place. So while DOGE may be over, let the lesson be that when we take back the House, we will hold them accountable. We will build a government that works for the American people, that is stronger, and we will stop billionaires from coming in and using their money to achieve their own political ends and line their own pockets. We will stop the self-dealing, not only in the White House, but that happens in this chamber. We will work to get big money out of politics, to end Citizens United, and to ensure that we have a system that actually represents the people of this country. We will rebuild better the agencies that were dismantled. We will create a whole new generation of public servants who want to serve this great nation, and we will bring a new deal for this country that is about results, that is about dignity, that puts people and service ahead of profits and not empty promises. And so that is why, Mr. Speaker, we are here today to celebrate the end of this dark chapter and bring DOGE to a conclusion. And with that, I yield back.
Members are reminded to refrain from engaging in personalities toward the president. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 3rd, 2025, the gentleman from Utah, Mr. Moore, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and exclude extraneous material on the topic of this special order.
Without objection.
Again, thank you, Mr. Speaker. In 10 years, the deficit will be greater than every penny spent by the federal government between 1789 and 2023. So we celebrate our 250th. This is a time to reflect on it and to focus on it. And I'm going to share something tonight that's going on every single day, specifically about trying to find the opportunity for deficit reduction. I've got another colleague that will be here momentarily as well. But this is obviously an evergreen topic, something that we're constantly focused on, something that members of the Budget Committee, members of the Bipartisan Fiscal Forum, members of various groups that focus more heavily on this than maybe some other issues. I'm proud to count myself as part of that. I remember voting against debt ceiling increases that didn't have some type of spending reduction, even from my own side, proposing them. That didn't have some type of spending reduction, a spending cap, or even a fiscal commission. There's many solutions, and it is a key aspect, and it's something that we need to reflect on. Look, in President Trump's first year, as we started the 119th Congress, so taking that first entire year, calendar year 2025, and comparing it to calendar year 2024, a very unique thing happened. We had about $360 billion worth of deficit reduction. We run approximately $1.8 to $1.9 trillion deficit over the last few years, and it has gone up considerably since COVID, during President Biden's 4 years, and the first year that Republicans had the White House, House, and Senate, we had an extraordinary feat of $360 billion worth of deficit reduction. There were spending constraints. There was restructuring of how we approached some of the student loan aspect of the budget, various elements within the entirety of the appropriations process from different agencies across the board that were pulling back and withholding some of their planned spending. And that mixed with revenues from tariffs created a $360 billion deficit reduction. It doesn't get reported much, doesn't get talked about. Now, portion of those tariff money after the SCOTUS ruling will be refunded back. So there will be, of that 360, there will be money going back ultimately to some of these companies that are involved in this. And the world of tariff and trade policy will continue to play out, where you will still get revenue to help us offset some of the deficits. I've been critical of some of the tariff policy. I've been supportive of some of the tariff policy. I want two specific things from tariffs. I want them to be consistent. If they are going to exist, I want them to be consistent, something the companies and business folks and families can plan on, as well as be a positive contributor to reducing deficits. And I think there's an opportunity to do both of those things, and we're seeing that play out. I'm going to talk a little bit tonight about what is actually going on with one of the most important aspects of constant churn of us reducing deficits, and that is what is taking place within some of our government, our administrative agencies on finding fraud. And I'm going to share some anecdotes, share some data, and I look forward to doing that. Before I do that, I want to, as I mentioned, we've got a colleague here that is going to share a brief message. I'm going to yield him as much time as he may consume to the gentleman from the great state of North Carolina.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moore. Mr. Speaker, our national debt has now surpassed $39 trillion. And every second that we failed to address it. That number continues to grow, placing an even greater burden on future generations. Families across Western North Carolina understand just a simple truth. You can't spend money that you don't have. They balance their budgets, make difficult decisions, and expect their government to do the same. Unfortunately, Washington has spent far too long doing just the opposite. Decades of unchecked spending have left us with rising interest payments, growing deficits, and fewer resources available for the priorities that really matter. As a member of the House Appropriations Committee, I've worked to ensure that we are good stewards of every taxpayer dollar. That means supporting our national defense, strengthening border security, helping communities recover from disasters like Hurricane Helene, and funding the essential functions of government, while still looking for every opportunity to eliminate waste and fraud and abuse. Through the fiscal year 2027 appropriations process, House Republicans continued efforts to be responsible stewards of taxpayer dollars by identifying several savings, reducing unnecessary spending, eliminating wasteful programs, and ensuring funding is focused on the federal government's core responsibilities. We didn't create a $39 trillion debt overnight, and we're not going to solve it overnight. But every responsible spending decision moves us in the right direction. The American people deserve a government that lives within its means, just as they do every day. It's time to restore fiscal responsibility, reduce the deficit, and leave the next generation with a far stronger financial future. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you to the gentleman from North Carolina. I appreciate his message and his focus on these very important issues. Speaker, as I was mentioning, no question, we have a major issue in front of us. And over the last 18 months, as I've gone back home and had a chance to share a lot of the specifics as to the gains that we're making by the reductions, I wanted to just highlight some of this. You know, as our federal debt continues to grow unsustainably and major trust fund programs face looming insolvency, when we add insult to injury here, there is rampant fraud across our country. If we want to get a handle on our national debt, we also need to address what I will call the invisible tax on the American people. And the data is staggering. The data are staggering. The Government Accountability Office estimates that U.S. government losses, the U.S. government loses as much as $500 billion in federal funds every year to fraud. So $500 billion is wasted because fraudsters and scammers cheat our systems. That's $400 per American household every year, completely wasted. And if there's one thing that infuriates every American, it's the waste of their hard-earned taxpayer dollars. I find that in my own life. My wife and I are budgeting and everything, and we look first, like the part that's frustrating. It's not that you don't have to spend, it's not that you don't have to invest in areas, but you have to eliminate the waste. So families working hard to play by the rules, fraudsters are stealing millions, hundreds of millions of dollars from child care programs. So to address this, the House Republicans recently passed the Stop Child Care Scams Act, forcing accountability when states repeatedly fail to fix fraud and serious program violations. Fake ghost students are draining $180 million in financial aid that should be helping hardworking American students. So I'm supporting the ID verification before tax dollars to support those programs go out the door. Reports have exposed fraud in states like Minnesota and California. Even states like Florida have had many issues in this regard. They have industrial scale theft, and it's gone unabated for years. 1/3 of all hospices in the entire country, 1/3 of hospice companies in the entire country are in Los Angeles. And CMS estimates that at least half of those are fraudulent. 800 of those hospices have now been suspended. Numbers I had from just a couple months ago was that they reached out to, they suspended licenses of 400. They've even had a chance to do more, but they suspended 400 licenses and really only heard back from 12, meaning that 12 were probably running legitimate businesses, and they identified through good data analytics, investing in targeting the right areas where we anticipate there being significant fraud, and they are taking action. And then, hey, if somebody reaches out and says, whoa, 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 what's going on? Why did you cancel our license? It's a legitimate business. They're doing legitimate work. They can show that. But the overwhelming majority were actually, they had pinpointed it. They suspected some level of fraud, and it appears to be very accurate. Another anecdote that I just got recently, just this week, from a meeting with members within this agency, CMS, they have sent letters to, your Medicare number, patient number, you are signed up for a hospice treatment, so your hospice care. And they have an opportunity to send correspondence to these folks. Hey, just confirming that you have initiated hospice care. Could you, let us know? 15% have come back from states. I think the exact states they're from the Southwest, California, Nevada, I believe Arizona. Those 3 states came back. 15% of the people that they were sending letters to were saying, no, I'm not on hospice, right? And majority of that was sort of focused in this area. For some reason, Los Angeles area went rampant in this hospice world. 90 companies associated with one address. And I've worked in the durable medical equipment industry before, and there's equipment, there's call centers, there's workforce. You can't run 90 companies out of one location. But this is what these dedicated men and women within our organizations, within this administration, are going out to try to find. These are real numbers, real examples. This is not made up. And when I get the chance to go back and share this at home, they're really frustrated. They're also proud that this type of fraud doesn't stem from Utah. It's a moment of some recognition. States have a huge responsibility to play with respect to how these programs are implemented, and the states need to do a good job. And proud to say Utah has been deemed, be very strong in this case. And I'm really impressed with the professionalism that what I'm seeing. And they continue to go and identify this. They're using good data analytics to be able to figure out where the potential might be next and go after it. So it's something that I share tonight as we, highlight these issues of deficits, that this is going on daily. And as part of that first year of success of $360 billion, this is part of it. And this is the type of stuff that Americans love to see, because it is wasteful, it is fraudulent, people need to be held accountable, and that is all taking place and happening. Just this week, the Labor Department sent a strike team to New York to crack down on unemployment insurance fraud that is costing taxpayers an estimated $2 million a day. New York recorded more than $750 million in improper unemployment insurance payments and $507 million in fraudulent payments just last year. House Republicans are focused on ensuring the services get to the people who actually need them and are not wasted or stolen. In fact, on the Ways and Means Committee, we've worked to put new guardrails on the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, the TANF program, to mitigate improper payments and ensure states are paying their fair share for this critically important program. Empowering agencies to investigate and root out fraud and making targeted investments into fraud prevention and recovery programs is a giant step forward. For every dollar Medicare spends on monitoring programs, the government sees almost $25 in savings. And you will see Dr. Oz communicate this. You'll see his team communicate this. They have team members under Dr. Oz's purview that have said, I will come back and work in this job again. They worked in the Trump first administration. I will come back if we can be even more laser focused and really go after the fraud. And that was Oz's mission, and that is what his team's mission is, and they do an incredible job of explaining and sharing with us the proper information. It's not hyperbole, it's not rhetoric, it is literally data. And they talk about these numbers with respect to spending $1 on these efforts, site visits, sending out communication to find out if they're truly actual patients on hospice, right? And that takes a little bit of resource, but we're getting back a strong yield from that. $1 and $25 in savings. So we need more programs like this to root out and recover improper payments. To that end, I'm working on legislation that will allow more of the money recovered by healthcare fraud and abuse control to be reinvested directly into the fraud prevention programs. The areas that this money needs to be reinvested is back into the trust funds and also back into the programs that will help us continue to be strong in this regard. Earlier this year, House Republicans passed the Fraud Prevention and Accountability Act, legislation that strengthened fraud prevention across the federal government and helped protect taxpayer dollars from fraud, scams, and abuse. Families are stretching every dollar right now. Fraudsters are cashing in on taxpayer-funded programs. Child care, student aid, safety net programs. Americans play by the rules. Scammers should not get rewarded. This is the right fight. Every dollar stolen through fraud is a dollar taken from workers, families, seniors, veterans, small businesses that actually need the support. We've got enough excuses on this world. There's been enough loopholes, enough taxpayer money disappearing into fraud and abuse. Our government programs have a fraud problem, and our taxpayers are the ones paying the price. But these are loopholes that we're closing. We're cracking down on this and holding negligent state leaders accountable. We cannot lower our deficit without addressing the fraudulent spending across our country. For a year and a half, Republicans have shown a light on the amount of this fraud and abuse and just the sheer waste, and we're reducing the deficits by cutting the spending, and it's happening on a daily basis. As I mentioned earlier, the data that I have here, I was told several months ago that they had canceled 400 licenses and only heard back from 12. That is obviously a green light to then reach out and identify more. So you cancel a license and you don't hear from that company or those stakeholders, you've definitely nailed you've definitely nailed that right aspect of finding that fraudulent activity. And it's a point that I hope that every American can really understand. And this is not a partisan issue. Everything back here becomes partisan, but as you look at it and just actually take the data, this is a sensational thing that's going on, and it's going to continue to go on for the duration of this administration. We must continue to courageously work to solve this crisis and cannot let it get too late. I'm grateful to bring Utah's sound fiscal policies to Washington on the House Budget Committee, and I will continue to fight for the American family as we seek to give our children a better economic future. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Thank you. The gentleman yields. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 3rd, 2025, the chair recognizes the gentleman from New Jersey, Ms. Mejia, for 30 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask for unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous materials on the subject of this special order.
Without objection.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today as the proud co-chair of the House Democratic Caucus's Defend the 14th Amendment Task Force. This month, we mark the 158th anniversary of one of the most important amendments ever added to our Constitution. Forged in the aftermath of the Civil War and paid for by the blood, sweat, and tears of Black freedom fighters and their allies, the 14th Amendment declared that every person born in these United States is anointed with inalienable rights and responsibilities, never to be infringed upon by the actions of any state or entity. Together with the 13th and 15th Amendments, it marked what historians call the second founding of our nation, an effort to build a democracy that truly includes everyone. But history reminds us that writing rights into our Constitution is only the beginning. For decades after Reconstruction, millions of Black Americans were denied those very rights through segregation, voter suppression, and racial violence. The Constitution had not changed. What changed was whether or not our country chose to enforce it. It took generations of organizing and sacrifice before Congress passed the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and began making good on the promise that existed for nearly a century. That history matters because it teaches us an important lesson. Constitutional rights do not appear or disappear overnight. They are built or weakened piece by piece, action by action. Court decisions, legislation, political rhetoric, actions that slowly erode the institutions designed to protect our democracy. Viewed in isolation, the current challenges to birthright citizenship, due process, equal protection, and the freedom to vote may seem like isolated political actions, but viewed together, it becomes crystal clear that our Constitution and the promise of our second founding is under attack. What's more, it is clear that it is our duty as true patriots to combat it. That is why House Democrats created the Defend the 14th Amendment Task Force. Our mission is simple: defend the constitutional rights that generations of Americans fought to secure. Our rights are not guaranteed simply because they're written down. They endure because people defend them. The generations before us marched, organized, and sacrificed to make the promises of the 14th Amendment real. They understood that democracy requires participation, accountability, and constant vigilance. Now that responsibility belongs to us. Every generation faces a defining test. For generations that ratified the 14th Amendment, it was whether America would finally recognize citizenship and the humanity of those who had been enslaved. For the generations that marched across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, it was whether every American would have an equal voice at the ballot box. Our generation faces a different question. Will we preserve those constitutional guarantees for the generations that follow? As long as I have the privilege of serving in this House, I will continue fighting to protect that promise for every family, every community, and every generation to come. Mr. Speaker, the Constitution is only as strong as our willingness to defend it. And with that, I am glad to yield 4 minutes to my fellow co-chair from the great state of Missouri, the great state of Missouri for 4 minutes, Mr. Cleaver.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Speaker, I rise today as the proud co-chair of the 14th Amendment Task Force because I believe in one simple truth. The 14th Amendment is now under siege. For more than 150 years, this amendment has stood as one of the greatest promises our nation has ever made, that every person born in this country is entitled to equal protection under the law, and that no government may deny anyone due process simply because of who they are or where they were an immigrant from. It was born from one of the darkest chapters in American history. After slavery ended, our nation faced a choice. We could preserve injustice under a different name, or we could expand the promise of freedom. The 14th Amendment was our answer. It declared boldly that citizenship could not be rationed, that equality could not be optional, and that liberty belonged to all of us. But today, that promise is being tested. This administration has made no secret of its willingness to chip away at the constitutional protections generations of Americans have fought, marched, bled, and even died to secure. They are using every tool at their disposal to weaken the very rights that safeguard us all. For me, this fight is deeply personal. I was born in the Jim Crow South, a little place called Waxahachie, Texas. I came of age in a nation where equal protection existed only on paper, long before it existed in practice. I marched with the Southern Christian Leadership Conference starting when I was 15 years old. The SCLC was led by a young preacher by the name of Martin Luther King, Jr. And I marched because I believed America could become what it claimed to be. I believed that the Constitution should protect every citizen equally. I witnessed firsthand what happened when governments decide some people deserve fewer rights than others. The progress we celebrate today did not happen by accident. It happened because brave Americans demanded that the 14th Amendment finally be honored. It was the Equal Protection Clause that became the constitutional foundation for Brown versus Board of Education, ending legally sanctioned segregation in our public schools. It was the 14th Amendment that strengthened the fight against discriminatory voting laws, housing discrimination, and unequal treatment in employment. It was the 14th Amendment that has protected interracial marriage, expanded equality for women, safeguarded the rights of people with disabilities, and affirmed the dignity of LGBTQ Americans. Time and time again, when our nation has taken a step toward justice, it has done so because someone stood up and insisted that the words of the 14th Amendment actually meant what they say. That's why attack of any kind on equal protection and due process are not isolated legal disputes. They are attacks on the very foundation of modern civil rights. They are attacks on the constitutional principle that tell every child they matter before the law. They are the attacks on the guarantees that protect workers from exploitation, families from discrimination, religious liberty, voting rights, and the simple expectation that government must treat people fairly. When government weakens these protections for one group, it weakens them for everyone. History teaches us that constitutional rights are rarely lost all at once. They're chipped away slowly. One exception, one excuse, one precedent at a time, until Americans wake up and discover that what once seemed guaranteed has quietly disappeared. We cannot allow this to happen. Our constituents know what is at stake. They understand that the promise of America has been bigger than politics. They know that the Constitution belongs to every American, not just those in power. So as the co-chair of the 14th Amendment Task Force, I stand with my colleagues in defense of one of the most important guarantees ever written into our Constitution. We will defend equal protection. We will defend due process. We will defend, yes, birthright citizenship. And we will continue fighting until the promise of the 14th Amendment is not merely something we celebrate in history books, but something that every American can experience in their daily lives. The struggle to perfect our union has never been easy, but every generation is called to protect the freedoms it inherited. Now, it's our turn. I yield back.
Mr. Speaker, it is my honor to yield the floor for 4 minutes to my fellow co-chair from the great state of Washington, Ms. Randall.
So much, Mr. Speaker and Congresswoman Mejia, for your leadership. The 14th Amendment means what it says. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. Those are the words on paper. Donald Trump and Stephen Miller attempted to rewrite the Constitution through an executive order banning birthright citizenship for the children of undocumented immigrants. The same legal arguments that were first used when a white supremacist wanted to deny U.S. citizenship to Chinese Americans. 4 Supreme Court justices dissented in the ruling to protect the 14th Amendment. That tells us that we are not safe from these continuous attacks from Donald Trump and his administration on our Constitution, on our freedom, on our neighbors. We know that the White House is currently scheming to have Trump's activist Supreme Court rehear the case that upheld the 14th Amendment, that upheld birthright citizenship. This is all part of a larger agenda to dehumanize Black and brown people in this country, to strip away their rights and to normalize questioning who belongs here, who is American enough. It's why Republicans have funded Donald Trump's immigration agenda by $200 billion, and why, on the 158th anniversary of the 14th Amendment, my colleagues and I launched the Defend the 14th Amendment Task Force. Our goal is simple: to defend the Constitution, to coordinate oversight and public education efforts, and to respond strongly to the Trump administration's attacks on our rights, on our freedom, on our Constitution, our country, and our communities. We will stand up to these attacks on civil liberties. We must continue this fight to ensure that the citizens of the United States are protected and that nothing erodes these constitutional protections. It's our duty, it's our responsibility, and it's the oath we swore when we took this public office. I'm so proud to be a co-chair of this task force, and so proud to stand here in defense of our Constitution. With that, I yield back.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank Chair Aguilar and my fellow co-chairs, Representative Cleaver, Randall, Simon, and Subramanian, for their leadership in launching the Defend the 14th Task Force. This work is about protecting the Constitution's promise that every person deserves equal protection, due process, and the full rights of citizenship. Those principles have shaped generations of progress in our country, and they are worth defending today, just as they were 158 years ago. We owe it to those who came before us and those who will follow us to ensure that that promise endures. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield the remaining time.
All right. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 3rd, 2025, the chair recognizes the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Schweikert, for 30 minutes.
And Mr. Speaker, and to the room, I apologize. I was doing a tour to a former firefighter who actually was paralyzed in the scope of his duties, and so, but we were close. All right, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to take 1 or 2 seconds here to try to straighten this out just a little bit. Okay. Presentation tonight is going to be a little bit technical. Sorry about that. So if you don't like math, if you don't like demographics, if you don't actually want to deal with the math I'm going to give you, now would be a good time to go find something on Netflix. I've been trying to make a point over and over and over around here that our borrowing is terrifying, and it's much worse than almost anyone's willing to talk about. We actually had some of the joint economic economists met with some of the Penn Wharton modelers over the last couple days. And when they use their population statistics, some of the coming years are even uglier than we get from CBO, when we get from O&B, and actually we get from some of the other scores. So let's actually just sort of start this and put this in perspective, and then understand there are solutions. You don't pay off the debt, but you can stabilize it. But what is the #1 driver of U.S. sovereign debt? And it's shocking how many of even our brothers and sisters here in this building get the math wrong. It's demographics. And it's the one thing we're really not supposed to tell the truth about. Next year, there's a model that says we will have fewer under 18 than we had 20 years ago. But we'll have almost double 65 and up that we had 20 plus years ago. It's baby boomers, and we've gone decade and decade and decade without enough children. It's just math. Is that Republican or Democrat? It's just math. So once again, all right, let's do this. And for those of you who've actually paid attention over the years, you've noticed over the time we talk about discretionary outlays. Today it's down to about 25%. What's blue here is what your member of Congress actually gets to vote on. What's red here is almost all formulaic. And that's part of the problem. A member of Congress today, we could all hold hands, sing kumbaya, love each other, get rid of every dime that's discretionary. Now that's non-defense and defense, but it's what we vote on, and you still couldn't balance the budget. Remember, last year for every dollar we took in, we spent $1.43. So far this year, and look, I'm hoping it bends back down, but this year the number's even worse. Interest this year, our model, just interest, total interest. So the interest we have to pay back the trust funds, the interest we have to pay the people who are willing to buy U.S. bonds, it's the second biggest expense in the federal government. So Social Security, interest, Medicare, Medicaid and Obamacare subsidies, defense. Once again, remember, defense, the thing that's in the Constitution, is actually number 5. And that interest may come in close to $1.3 trillion this year. That's about 20%. One of my charts is going to say 19, but my math is closer to 20% of all tax receipts go just to pay interest. And I'm going to say this 2 or 3 times in different ways. In 9 budget years, we have a model that says 30 to 33% of all the tax receipts will go just to interest. So you pay $1 in 9 years. What happens if a third of that money functionally is just covering the interest on the debt pileup? So important to understand this chart and why we show it. We often start with it all the time. All right, let's keep doing this. Net interest as a percentage of total revenues would approach 30%. And understand, we have a model that actually is over 30. It's actually as high as 33%. So here we are. Right now, we're in this slot here. So 19 to 20% of all of our tax receipts is going to interest in 9 budget years. This should terrify you. How many bridges, how many helping people get healthy, how many benefits is the interest paying? No, I mean, it does benefit those who buy the bonds, and there's the Ray Dalio theory of it's still money circulating back into the economy, but it's money that does not go to meet the mission of the federal government. It's basically paying for past spending. And the ethical question here is borrowing a tax hike? You know, for some of the anti-tax groups, I love them. I would cut spending dramatically. I voted that way, and I'm in a tough district. But let's be honest, this place, what's the running joke here, Mr. Speaker? No one ever got unelected by spending too much money. And it's sort of perverse, but the bond market will basically be running the federal government in the next few years because the influence it will have and the damage it can do to us. So that's a percentage to understand. So let's actually dig in it a little bit more. Oh, let's get this. Sorry, the boards, because I started late, are all upside down. So forgive me, I'm going to be bouncing these around. The rising national debt will lower wages. This is something we've been looking at over and over and over. We keep talking about affordability. Last week or 2 weeks ago, I brought you an academic paper and showed you some charts that basically said if mortgage rates, a 30-year home loan rate today is, what, it's running 6.5, 6.7. If we weren't borrowing as much money as we are today, it would be 5.5, a full percentage point lower. And we were showing how that's several $1,000s a year on the average home price in America. So next time someone's talking about, we need to do stuff on home affordability, we absolutely do. One of the most powerful things we could do is actually convince the bond markets that the borrowing isn't going to keep going up, going up, and going up, and going up. That actually the federal government, and remember, it's federal governments all over the world, are just binging because of their demographics. They now have their retirement populations. They need to finance those benefits. And almost everything we're doing now is on borrowed money. So just to understand, there's a principle out there, whether it be your home loan being almost actually over a full point higher in interest rate because of federal government borrowing, we're also suppressing your wages. Because that capital, when it's in the market, helps business, plant and equipment keep investing in more productivity. Higher productivity actually means you can pay people more. Remember your old high school economics class? The 2 ways you raise wages, inflation? Well, that doesn't get you anything. It just means your wages go up, but your purchasing power had gone down. Or productivity, you're making more whatever you did because you invested in plant and equipment or better processes or better technology. That technology can't be financed because the federal government pushed up interest rates and consumed the capital. All right, that hopefully making sense. So let's do this. Remember I was trying to talk about housing affordability? Well, this is also another chart to just sort of understand what this means, that on an average price home in my marketplace, which is the Phoenix, Scottsdale, Tempe sort of area, a home just a little under $500,000 with no down payment, so we just mortgaged the whole thing. What if you could get what our model says, if we weren't borrowing so much, you get a 5.5% rate in today's market. If you actually look at what we've done to mortgage rates, that differential costs you several $1,000s over that year, just to understand what this does. Okay, so let's have a little more fun here. Now, I did this one because I'm going to do a whole section here on labor force participation. And you go, who cares? It's a big deal. And we're seeing some really funky numbers out there in some of that. And some of it's because we're getting older. Some of it is younger people are entering the labor force later. But there's some hope on that side of the ledger, but there's some difficulty here. So I decided I would grab actually a couple slides from Arizona, just to sort of demonstrate labor force participation rates in Arizona. And you see this red line here? So the blue is America. Why is Arizona crashed? Well, we actually have some problems. Arizona, particularly the Phoenix, Tucson area, had become sort of the back office, the call centers, the back office accounting centers of America. Much of this type of job has now become automated. And now we're starting to see it in our job numbers and the number of people who are actually choosing to leave the labor force because they're older and they're actually given up looking. But take a look at this chart and you start to understand what we're seeing. And this number is actually fairly recent. This is as of May 26, so this isn't old data. We always think of Arizona as being this remarkable growth center. Reality right now, we've stumbled, and we're going to have to really do some things to actually start to deal with the reality of what's going on in our labor market. And as you actually take a look at it even further, just because I love my state and I care, this is the national unemployment rate. And you see this spiking here? This is basically us right now, particularly what's been happening over the last several months. Our unemployment rates are actually really starting to spike up, and we're starting to see a real differential of Arizona compared to the rest of the country. This is what happens when you don't fixate on bringing the next generation of employment into your marketplace. All right. So let's geek out a little bit more. And I'm going to show you this chart because it's absurd. It's a chart that makes me... Social Security actuaries basically published a report, 3 weeks ago. And yes, I have a tabbed copy, and I meant to bring it up here, but we were out doing the tour. I want you to see something. You tell me how the Social Security actuaries came up with this number. So right here, this is actually U.S. population. And they have it falling and falling and falling, so a little beyond, so call it 2027. And then suddenly, they have U.S. population coming back up. We don't see this on Census Bureau data. We don't see this in some of the university data. We don't see this on some of the population statistics groups. But somehow, the actuaries for the Social Security actually say, well, we're going to get several years down, and the population's going, birth rates are going to continue to fall, fertility rates are going to continue to fall, but then suddenly, magically, they're going to come back. And that's why so many of us are so concerned about the long-run numbers they've published, because this growth rate in fertility population, I don't think matches reality. And so when you have people talk about, hey, in 6 years, 3 months, the Social Security actuaries have the trust fund being empty. But don't worry, the long run rate is, we're in real trouble, but it's not, it's actually has, we believe, completely unsupportable population statistics in it. All right, so that was my attempt to mock the Social Security Actuary Report. All right, and I'm sorry for me going fast, but I only have about 20 more minutes to try to do this. This chart is really, really important, and it's new to us. So net entries into the labor force. If the Social Security Trust Fund is empty in 6 years, 3 months, if the Medicare Trust Fund is empty pretty much at the same time, the model says if we follow the law, those of us on Social Security will take a 22 to 24% cut. That means the doubling of senior poverty 6.5, 7 years from now. Medicare trust fund is empty. And one of our problems in the Medicare healthcare spending is we refuse to have a conversation on how to lower healthcare prices. We keep having discussions of how to manipulate, do financial engineering on healthcare. So we've turned healthcare into a financing instead of the adoption of technology where you can functionally wear your own medical lab, you can use technology to actually refer yourself, those things, because we're terrified to actually explain to the armies in our hallways who are here lobbying us that in less than 7 years, Medicare spending will double. We'll go from $1 trillion last year to some 6 years from now, $2 trillion, and at that time, the trust fund's empty. And if you're a hospital, you're taking at least a 12% cut. This is what's happening in the numbers. But why this is important is one of the ways you grow an economy is either stable or growing population. And particularly if that population has risen in skill sets. It's why so many countries around the industrialized world fight like hell for talent-based immigration. You don't bring mass poverty across the border, you go out and recruit really smart people because they pay a hell of a lot of taxes. This chart is basically saying, in just a few years, our labor force actually starts to decrease. And that's 2.8 million in 2030. That's how many years from now, Mr. Speaker? It's 2026. So think of this. In 4 years, the data says U.S. available labor population actually starts to shrink by over 2.8 million people. Now you tell me how I'm supposed to make the money, the math, the data, the finances work for these programs. You've got to do the unified theory of whether it be a talent-based immigration system, the adoption of technology, the redesigning of incentives. You're going to have to do dozens and dozens of things, and we're not willing to do that yet. All right. Look, this is a complicated board. It doesn't work on television. It doesn't really work on a floor speech, but I just need you to understand what we're looking at is because we're aging as a population without enough young people, that are percentages who are available to us. This is 2026, this is 1977. It would basically explain when I was a kid in the 70s, for every dollar we spent on seniors, we spent almost $7 on people that were functionally young. Today that number's flipped. And it's just flipped because the demographics have flipped. It's the same thing has happened here with who's available to be in the labor force. Much of our labor force population now is much older. You know, the available for young is half what we had when I was young. It's just baby boomers. And we knew people were going to turn 65 for how many years? I mean, this place in some ways is so incredibly absurd in its unwillingness to basically do basic math. I remember sitting in a statistics class like 1981, and the professor then was talking about what baby boomers meant to the economy. Here I am, a member of Congress all these years later, and it's like we're just now discovering it. All right. Here's actually something, it is hopeful, but the next slide will actually take the wind out of your sails. So prime age labor force participation, so the people we consider sort of in their prime working years. Actually, we're doing really well here. Some of the growth in the economy, some of the investment in the economy, for prime age, we got 84%. But here's my problem. Labor force participation of those 55 and up has been crashing. There's lots of reasons to debate this and discuss this. Is this skill sets? Is it the adoption of technology? Is it the wealth effects of, you know, as asset prices have gone up so much, we have people able to retire early? It's a combination of everything. But these workers are often our most productive. So just understand, working age, prime working age people are actually doing really well working, being in the labor force. Those of us who are older, we've been disappearing like crazy. And we actually see that in our productivity numbers. All right. Sorry, I warned you this was going to be a little geeky. Mr. Speaker, may I inquire to how many minutes I have left?
The gentleman has 10 minutes remaining.
Excellent. I'm probably going to use every one of them. No, I'll try to go as fast as I can here. U.S. population age 65 and up. If you and I go back to 2011, 41 million. This year, I have 63 million. Okay. You know, wonderful. I'm one of these. I'm basically 64. Now, I understand, my wife and I are both 64, and I have a 4-year-old and a 10-year-old, so we're very optimistic about the future, or we're out of our minds. But We all knew this was happening. So we did what to shore up the trust funds? We did what to basically incentivize our brothers and sisters to stay in the labor force if they wanted to? We had dozens of things. I've been here 16 years, and I've spent most of the time trying to get this place to actually deal with the reality of, let's save Social Security, let's actually save Medicare, let's do those things that help us grow, let's adopt the technologies so we can crash the price of health care. And I've had some success on the edges, but I lose to the armies of lobbyists that are in the hallways here that lose their minds that we might change their business models. Look, Mr. Speaker, we're now borrowing about $90,000 every second. Today, we will borrow about $7 billion. The current burn rate so far this fiscal year, just this fiscal year, we're going to come in close to $2.2, $2.3 trillion of borrowing. And yet we have higher interest rates. How long is the bond market going to keep saying, we're going to finance you because how much of the benefits that our brothers and sisters who are older have earned, we're actually borrowing the money. Seniors per 100 workers. And actually, here's just the simple math. You remember how many of us sort of grew up and always hearing about, hey, you know, you got 23 people per retiree, and that's how we finance Social Security. I've shown some charts here where in the end of a decade from now, you have about 2.3. And it's this. In 2011, we had 21.9 seniors, or working age folks per senior. Today, we actually are, that number has eroded, 47% increase in that change. It's almost a 50% change in that time, and it continues, and it actually steepens. And part of the steepening isn't because we have more seniors, it's also because we have substantially fewer young people. All right. 65 will continue to grow as a share of the population. So in 9 budget years, 21.4% of the population will be in their benefit ages. Our system wasn't prepared for this. In 26 months from now, I should have double-checked the math, over half of the federal spending, over half the federal spending will go to those of us 65 and up. Not half of the tax receipts. Remember, if you're borrowing $2.3 trillion on top, but think about that. Our government functionally is an insurance company with an army. All right, and this is actually one of my intense frustrations, that we take a look. The trustee population, this is the trustees report, projects a significant more optimistic than the sources. Remember, I showed you a chart there, and I was somewhat mocking the trustees report, basically saying they have this magic thing where fertility rates crash and crash and crash and crash, and that's within the next 9 years, and then suddenly, magically, it explodes upward. No one else has that. So here's the Medicare and Social Security actuaries, trustees, saying, oh, well, we're going to go along, but magically, when we get to 2030, they're going to start to go up where everyone else. This has created a distortion. That's actually why you see groups like my Joint Economic Committee, Penn Wharton, so many of the others saying the trustees are missing it. The debt the United States is in is dramatically more devastating. Mr. Speaker, 2030, 2035 isn't that far away. So I'm sure we're all going to get together, decide we're going to do a debt deficit commission. I'm sure we're all going to get together and lay out the incentives of how we actually manage this crisis. I'm sure we're going to do those things to convince the bond markets convince the bond markets that we're creditworthy. Because here's part of the frustration. Greece today can sell a 10-year bond cheaper than the United States. Greece today has a better forward credit rating than the United States. We are now 13 or 14 on the credit stack where other countries can actually sell a 10-year bond cheaper than we can. And I just keep wondering, I've been coming behind this microphone for almost a decade and a half. We've been introducing pieces of legislation that could revolutionize the costs of healthcare, could actually make government dramatically more efficient. And I almost can't get a single member of Congress to co-sponsor any of these because you have to go to war with all the lobbyists because it means changing the bureaucracies or the business models out there. It's like they basically have this attitude, screw the society, screw my kids, screw your retirement. As long as I don't have to tell the truth about the math. Today, your government borrowed about $90,000 a second. Yesterday, we borrowed about $90,000 a second. Tomorrow, we're going to borrow, that's like $7 billion today. And we will argue for hours here on the floor for millions. And I need you to see a chart. If this is $1 billion, if this is $1 trillion, millions is basically this tiny little, the lack of calculators here is the destruction of this republic. For those who actually tell me, David, it's waste and fraud, it's this and that. I've done presentations to show you our best calculations of waste and fraud is, it's a problem, but it's a sliver. Because the majority of what we call waste and fraud is actually the waste. It is the way we have designed programs. And Mr. Speaker, I don't believe my brothers and sisters here are actually willing to do the hard things and tell the truth about the math and then redesign these programs because it means getting the crap kicked out of you by the lobbying and the business models out there, that it means creating a revolution of taking on the debt and deficits. We will pay a remarkable price for the fact that the Penn-Wharton models within a decade had us actually already approaching the no-go numbers of being able to sell our U.S. debt. And at that point, the bonds explode and the bond market runs this country. And with that, I yield back.
Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 3rd, 2025, the Chair recognizes the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Wilson, for 30 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And ladies and gentlemen, the South Carolina House delegation is humbled to pay tribute to our beloved, belated U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham. We've got several members here tonight, and we will begin with Congressman Ralph Norman of Rock Hill.
First of all, I want to thank Congressman Wilson for organizing this tribute to a dear friend of all of us, not only in South Carolina, but all over every state in this country. I wish everyone could have been in the Senate well when Darlene, his sister, took the oath of office from the President Pro Tem in the Senate and then took the desk that Lindsey had occupied for 24 years in the Senate. It was moving. It was a tribute to Lindsey Graham that she was able to do this, and appointed by Governor McMaster. Lindsey understood that success in South Carolina meant looking out for every South Carolinian. Whether it was a major defense project or a small-town infrastructure need, he fought to bring federal resources back to South Carolina and make sure that every corner of our state had a voice in Washington, D.C. From securing the Medal of Honor for a Marine, Major James Capers, that after a 5-year time frame to work to get Major Capers the Medal of Honor, we succeeded. Lindsey was a part of that. to supporting our military installations, strengthening our border security, defending the rights of states, and advancing priorities that benefit South Carolina. We worked side by side on issues that mattered to those back home. He believed in delivering results, not just making speeches. He knew that the work of elected officials is measured by what they accomplish for the people they represent, and he consistently fought to ensure that South Carolina received its fair share of opportunities. We didn't have to agree on every issue. Lindsey never had an enemy that I knew of, and you could disagree with him, and while not being disagreeable. When there was an opportunity to move the state forward, Lindsey was willing to put the work in. This was evidence to me when I went on a trip into Munich, Germany back in 2020. And I think it was a 4-day trip, and I watched him go to every meeting of every country that was there primarily to share ideas and to bring companies back to the United States, which benefited every state in the Union. He had a passion for that, particularly a passion for Ukraine and other countries that he had a belief in. His legacy will include far more than legislation. It will be remembered in the communities that benefited from his advocacy, the veterans he fought for, the historic sites he worked to preserve, and the love he continuously included and worked for countless South Carolinians. Lives were improved, families were so beneficial on the efforts that they showed. He had a constituency staff second to none. If you called Lindsey Graham's office, he did what he could to help you out, regardless of whether you were from South Carolina or not. He was a funny man. Like any good comedian, it's not what he said, it's how he said it. So Lindsey Graham made his life work for the betterment of South Carolina and the betterment of others. He will be sorely missed in this state and sorely missed by Darlene, who he raised and adopted after both parents died. We thank him for a life well lived. And again, Joe, thank you for having this moment to recognize a great man. I yield back to you.
And Congressman Ralph Norman, thank you for your heartfelt comments. Indeed, I agree with the appreciated talk radio show host Kelly Nash, WVOC, who correctly began statewide broadcasting Monday that South Carolinians are heartbroken upon learning of the passing of U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham on Saturday. I will always be grateful for my decades-long association with Senator Graham as we served together. He was the South Carolina Air Guard Staff Judge Advocate, and I was the South Carolina Army Staff Judge Advocate serving together. Courageously, after one of our drill days, he announced to me his candidacy for the State House from Oconee County, South Carolina. I immediately congratulated him, but then I caught myself, and that is I remembered that, in fact, nobody from our party had ever been elected from Oconee County to the State House. But indeed, he made history and became the first Republican elected from Oconee to the State House of South Carolina. Sunday morning, when I spoke with President Donald Trump, I knew he shared the grief of all South Carolinians. It was just heartfelt to hear him as we reviewed the service of Senator Graham, understanding that he truly was a champion for peace through strength, dedicated through public service, his military career, his service as a veteran, and his service in the State House, U.S. Senate, and in every way backing up the people of South Carolina. Senator Graham's last week of life was symbolic of his dedication for America. He attended the NATO summit in Ankara, Turkey, and while he was there, he met with President Ahmad al-Shara of Syria, and it was really very significant because he had been skeptical, as many people, about the new government of Syria, but he had, upon meeting with President al-Shara, identified that President Donald Trump was correct. Give Syria a chance. And so it was exciting that he announced that he looked forward to actual progress with the new government of Syria to be working with the United States. Additionally, and he next went to Kyiv, Ukraine. he was with President Vladimir Zelensky. And while he was there, it was so impressive that he had the opportunity to also visit a drone manufacturing facility to see the extraordinary success of the people of Ukraine, who are going to be victorious over war criminal Putin. And with the development of drone technology, indeed, the people of Ukraine are inspiration. And while he was there, he was able to announce that in working with President Donald Trump, that there would be sanctions on war criminal Putin and on Russia. And indeed, it's so meaningful that indeed, as soon as we got back to Washington, the U.S. Senate, I want to thank Senator John Cornyn and others, have made it possible that there will be a Russian Sanctions Act, which indeed will be in the name of Lindsey Graham, as the Lindsey Graham Russian Sanctions Act. It'll be so impressive to help back up the people of Ukraine. And additionally, when Senator Graham arrived back in Washington on Saturday, how incredible that he had the strength and fortitude to have a very long conversation with President Donald Trump to review the activities of the week and the successes that he saw of the Trump administration to provide peace through strength. But sadly, there was sudden death right after the phone call. With that, myself personally, I was, when I learned of the passing of the senator, I was at Souda Bay in Greece, visiting Navy personnel of the U.S. Navy to indeed thank them for their service. And as soon as I heard about the passing, within an hour, I sent a tweet: with the passing of Senator Lindsey Graham, he will always be cherished as an American patriot, tireless for peace through strength, successful defeating totalitarians. All three generations of the Wilson family extend deepest sympathy and appreciation of his dedicated service. End of quote. The three generations of the Wilson family begin with my wife, Roxanne, and myself, and then I'm really grateful for our son, Attorney General Alan Wilson, who we have really been so appreciative, was to be on the Lindsey Graham Republican ticket as the nominee for governor of South Carolina in November. And so the Wilson family is so happy to work with persons, and now with Darlene Graham, what a wonderful person. And then our third generation, actually Houston Wilson of SMU, served as a Graham U.S. Senate floor page. So over and over again, our family appreciates personally, and the people of South Carolina are so grateful for the service of Senator Lindsey Graham. I'm also very happy that we have been joined by Congressman Russell Fry of Surfside Beach.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Joe Wilson, for organizing this fitting tribute to a statesman that we will surely miss. I join my colleagues here, both from South Carolina, but really around the country, and indeed around the world, in mourning the passing of our senior senator statesman, Lindsey Graham. Lindsey was more than just a senator. He was a dedicated public servant, a fierce advocate for South Carolina, and an even better person and a great friend. His life, his legacy are the people and the lives that he touched, the energy that he brought to public service, the dedication to issues, the enjoyment of a good argument, even when you disagreed with him, and the humor that he always had, really, in almost every situation. And they would not just try to do it. A lot of people would try to care for their siblings, but that they would be successful in that endeavor and really stop and take a moment and make sure that your number one mission was the success of your family and your young sister. Lindsey's entire world was turned upside down when he lost his parents, but he did a remarkable job, and I think that really shows who he is as a person. He's had a lot of titles, Mr. Wilson. In life, he was in the state legislature. He was a congressman. He was our senator for 30 years. You know, in South Carolina, we have senators for a long time. 30 years is a long time in this body, and what a mark it is that he left. Some people come up to Washington, D.C., and they hit yes, they hit no, they think that they've done something impactful, but Lindsey Graham was a mover and a shaker. He really understood how to maneuver, how to work with people to accomplish something. And I think it was said by Mr. Wilson earlier that even when you disagreed with him, he found something that you could work on together. I think that was a hallmark of who he was. You know, I first met Lindsey, first saw Lindsey, actually, when I was 18 years old, and he was campaigning for the first time for the United States Senate. It was after 9/11. He was in Congress at the time, but was campaigning, and our president then, George W. Bush, was campaigning with him in Columbia, South Carolina. And I just remember at such a young age, just the moment, you know, after 9/11, how impacted the country was, the feeling of unity. Certainly the president captured that at the time. He captured that and really helped land him in the United States Senate. I fortunately interned for him. It was an interesting summer because, you know, Lindsey always liked to tackle tough issues. He didn't come up here to not be in the middle of the fray. I think President Teddy Roosevelt talks about the man in the arena, that even if you fail, that you do so striving valiantly. And in that particular summer, Mr. Wilson, that was the summer that he tried to tackle comprehensive immigration reform, which landed him in a lot of hot water from both sides of the political aisle. And I just remember that summer. Of course, I loved it. I'd never been to D.C., but I loved the experience of just fielding phone calls and seeing how our government works. And that was who he was. Now, later, Mr. Wilson, when I got elected to Congress, the senator jokingly asked if I wanted my desk back from when I was an intern and my old headset back, but the scars from that summer were still fresh, and I did not take him up on that offer. But the great thing about the senator that I would say, just as a person that grew up watching his career and then I say being part of Team South Carolina and fighting for this state, was he really invested in people. Up here, he would work with Congressman Wilson's office, Congressman Clyburn, the whole delegation, our new addition, fantastic addition, Ms. Biggs. He would work with you to try to find ways to advance issues that you were working on, things that mattered to South Carolina, whether it was an appropriation for a firehouse in Cheraw, South Carolina, whether it was a piece of legislation that he and I worked on, the Logan-Federico Act, that would be a phenomenally good change in the way that we track violent criminals in this state. He always had his finger on the pulse of what was going on, always thinking about how to make the lives of South Carolinians and the American people a little bit better. And everyone knows how impactful he was, not just in the Senate, but with the White House. I mean, he was the unofficial whisperer to President Trump, how to navigate and have success in this body, in this town, making sure that you're delivering an agenda that the American people elected you to do. That takes real courage, that takes guts, it takes a lot of long days and evenings navigating that endless array of traps that you could fall into, but that was who he was. He didn't sit around and wait for things to happen. He was always in the middle, trying to make sure that we were delivering on the things that we said that we would. So it was always an honor, Mr. Wilson, to work with him, and you, of course, in this whole delegation. It matters greatly. His loss is going to be tough to deal with, just on a personal level, but also on the way that he helped deliver for South Carolina. But in 2 Timothy, the Apostle Paul writes, "I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith. Now there is in store for me the crown of righteousness, which is the Lord. The righteous judge will award to me on that day, and not only to me, but also to all who have longed for his appearing. My friend Lindsey Graham has fought the good fight, he has kept the faith, and although unexpectedly, I know he is reunited with his parents. He has received that crown. In the midst of a beautiful reunion, he heard the words, 'Well done, my good and faithful servant.'" And with that, I yield back.
Thank you very much, Congressman Russell Fry of the 7th District. And indeed, Timothy is a proper reference from the Bible of a person that we so admire. And then we're so fortunate to be joined this evening with the Congressman lady from the 3rd District of South Carolina, Sherry Biggs.
Thank you to my colleagues. I really appreciate your leadership, Congressman Wilson, and your friendship, Congressman Fry, and thank you, Mr. Speaker. So today, South Carolina mourns the loss of one of its most dedicated public servants, Senator Lindsey Graham. I can't tell you how many calls I've gotten this week, some of them not even our constituents, some of them not even from the state of South Carolina, but I think the impact that Senator Graham made was worldwide, as my colleagues have already mentioned. I know this week Governor McMaster appropriately named Darlene to fill her brother's term, and I applaud that decision. We wish her success, and Team South Carolina, we're here to assist in anything that she may need during her term. Lindsey's story was a South Carolina story. He was raised in the town of Central, which is in my district. He learned the value of hard work in his family's restaurant. After losing both of his parents while attending college, he became the guardian of his younger sister, Darlene, putting family before himself and demonstrating the character that would define his life. As a healthcare provider, as a psych mental health practitioner, I can't help but think about what that must have been like for that young man. The enormous responsibility and how he put everything before his own self. From that moment on, service became the defining purpose of his life. Senator Graham earned his law degree. He served our nation in the United States Air Force, retiring as a colonel after more than 3 decades, and devoted over 30 years to representing the people of South Carolina in the State House, in the United States House of Representatives, and in the United States Senate. His commitment to service and his love for South Carolina and his unwavering devotion to the people he represented will leave a legacy that endures for generations. I've had members of the military call in this week to express their sincere condolences for our loss in South Carolina. He was a friend to South Carolina, but he was also a friend to other states and other nations, and he will be missed dearly. Throughout his career, he was a steadfast champion of our conservative principles. Not everyone agreed with his politics and his policies, but one thing I think that we can agree on is that he did love his state and he loved his country, and he fought hard to shape the conservative Supreme Court as we know it today. He defended the sanctity of life, and he championed our service members and veterans, and he remained one of the strongest advocates for our allies abroad. And I was thinking earlier today, we were in Seneca, South Carolina, and we were there with some members that were supporters of Israel, and we talked about our faith. And I remember him standing in front of that congregation. It was at a church, and he was so passionate about his work and those people, and he didn't hesitate for 1 minute to talk about his faith. And those are the things that I will remember, how strong he was and how he didn't waver one bit. Today, I ask my colleagues to join me in honoring Senator Lindsey Graham's extraordinary life of service and in praying for his family and all who mourn his loss. With that, I yield back.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Sherry Biggs, and indeed, it's such a great honor for all of us to serve with you. At this time, I want to inquire how much more time.
Gentleman from South Carolina has 9 minutes.
1 minute?
9.
Oh, 9 minutes. Hey, indeed, I'm grateful because I wanted to really bring to the attention of the American people and to the people in South Carolina the deep affection that President Donald Trump had for our senior Senator Lindsey Graham. In fact, the White House statement upon his death is so clear, and that is that President Donald Trump reflects on the life and legacy of Senator Lindsey Graham following his sudden passing this weekend. And it's a really touching situation. President Trump describes the loss as deeply personal. Additionally, President Trump reflected on the final conversation with Senator Graham. It's devastating. I thought he was fine. He called me last night. What a terrible loss it is. He was a great politician. He was a natural. There are very few of them. He was a natural politician. He got along with everybody. Additionally, President Trump singled out Senator Graham's passionate defense of Brett Kavanaugh as a standout Senate moment. I think his finest moment was his defense of Brett Kavanaugh, who's terrific guy and was treated very unfairly by the Democrats. I think it was a top 10, maybe a top 5 moment in the history of the U.S. Senate. It was an incredible display, and he did it from the heart. He felt strongly about Brett, and he did it from the heart, and he turned the whole thing around. End of quote. President Trump praised Senator Graham's political skill and ability to build relationships. The president says he got along with everybody, and yet he was a tough cookie in a lot of ways. Honestly, he was a great politician. People don't realize what a great politician he was. This man was a great politician. He really got it. And additionally, he concluded that he reflected on the broader legacy of Senator Lindsey Graham. Quote, "We lost a great man. He was a great man. He was a great politician, and he was a very kind man. The real loser was the United States of America. We lost a great person, a kind person, a very smart person. Everything for him was about work. It was about loving the country." And it's been really so remarkable to see outpouring around the world, calls from members of the National Assembly of Bulgaria, from the Bundestag in Germany, over and over again from the Assembly in Thailand, as Congresswoman Biggs has so carefully and clearly stated, that worldwide, Lindsey Graham was appreciated for what he has done for Peace Through Strength to rebuild our military and rebuild our alliances around the world. Additionally, I'm very grateful that there were a number of editorials that I hope people will look up. And for example, it was very meaningful to me. The New York Post had a wonderful tribute to him. Indeed, Washington in shock as Senate stalwart dies suddenly at 71. Death of a patriot. How clear that is. And the article is further identifying what an extraordinary individual the senator. And with that, they also had an editorial that truly was meaningful, and that the sudden passage of Senator Graham immediately brought well-deserved, fulsome tributes from across the political spectrum. But actions can speak louder than words, and his colleagues in Washington and his beloved South Carolina have clear opportunities to honor his legacy by continuing it, and specifically, they can pass additional secondary sanctions on Vladimir Putin's Russian war machine that Graham pushed in recent months, and indeed that is being done today. Also, I want to commend that there's been a remarkable editorial that I hope so many people read from the Wall Street Journal. Lindsey Graham, the senator, was an influential voice for global world leadership. And then I want to thank the chairman of the Republican Party, Drew McKissick, for his heartfelt tribute from the South Carolina Republican Party that truly indicates the love and affection that the people of South Carolina have for Lindsey Graham. And then it goes on to, I'm really grateful for National Review, which was the initial conservative publication that so many of us, and with a South Carolina connection, William F. Buckley Jr. and the Buckley family of Camden, South Carolina. And so National Review had the wonderful review by Jeffrey Blahar on July the 14th, and indicating what an extraordinary individual Senator Lindsey Graham. And then it continues with references by other publications from around the world as to the accomplishments of Senator Lindsey Graham and all of us that have had the opportunity to serve with him. And I also want everyone to know that the other members of Congress had different conflicts, but bipartisan. Congressman Jim Clyburn wanted to extend his greatest sympathy, and he and Senator Graham really had a great working relationship, and so it was that was bipartisan. And then I'm grateful too that the Congress lady from the 1st District, Congresswoman Nancy Mace, indeed has been grief-stricken and released statements, and Congressman William Timmons of Greenville, we appreciate so much his, and indeed, as we've already heard from Congressman Ralph Norman, from Congressman Russell Fry, and Congresswoman Sherry Biggs, and how outstanding it is, the members, and also, hey, we're so fortunate too, Senator Tim Scott, the federal delegation that we have is so tied together and with deep appreciation of the service that each of us have had. And again, I'm just humbled to be here tonight and in any way to pay tribute to a great American, a great patriot, a South Carolinian who will always be cherished. And with that, I now move that we adjourn.